First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Will Miller, who is Associate Vice President for Continuous Improvement and Institutional Performance and SACSOC Liaison at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He oversees assessment, institutional effectiveness, state authorizations, and all disciplinary accreditations. A leader in the field, he holds leadership roles with FAIR, SARE, and AALHE, and publishes in key journals such as Intersection and Transformative Dialogues. He currently leads the Generative AI Community of Practice in partnership with IUI's Assessment Institute. Next, I'd like to welcome Becky Vasquez, who is Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Embry-Riddle. With over 25 years in higher education technology leadership, she drives the university's digital strategy, cloud initiatives, and IT risk management. A two-time CIO 100 award winner and recognized as a top 10 education CIO, Becky is an advocate for seamless user experiences and serves on multiple EdTech advisory boards. She holds a BS in leadership and an MS in information security and assurance. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ken Witcher, who is the Chancellor for the Prescott campus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. The Prescott campus is the proud home to just over 3,000 students, hosts over 25 bachelor's degrees, 3 graduate programs, and nearly 200 student groups and organizations. Dr. Witcher demonstrated tremendous leadership in previous position as Dean of the College of Aviation worldwide, leading a team of over 700 active faculty supporting over 14,000 students. He has been an esteemed Embry-Riddle faculty member since 2004. Next and last, I'd like to welcome our moderator, who is Carey Hansard. She is the Associate Dean of Strategy and Operations for the Division of Academic Innovation and a certified coach. She has served in several roles over her 14-year career at Embry-Riddle, and she stays connected to teaching and learning by serving as an adjunct instructor in the College of Business. Carey, Becky, Will, and Dr. Witcher, thank you, and I'm looking forward to a great panel.
Thanks, Chris. I love how he introduced me. Next and last. You know, I was thinking maybe last but not least. No, next and last. So that's me. I don't have any cool acronyms like Will, but I am certainly happy to be here today, and it's an honor to moderate this panel. So we're going to start off with some questions about innovation and modality in higher education, and I'd like to start with Ken for this one. Chris mentioned that you started in 2004. I think when I met you, you were maybe the Dean of Academics at a worldwide campus somewhere, Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's right.
Director, that's right.
The Director of Academics, that's
The
right.
DA, it's an acronym. That's why I didn't remember what it was. Yeah, the DA out in Las Vegas. So you've been around a while, and I think that gives you a unique perspective to answer this particular question. As we have more students moving in between in-person and online formats, how can we continue to ensure that there's high quality learning experiences that are consistent across modalities? We're trying to encourage students to take worldwide classes and in-person classes.
Yeah, that's thanks, Carey. That's a great question, and I appreciate it. That's a big challenge, right? I mean, that high quality, I think, is the biggest piece that you can talk about there from that particular question, and it applies to all of us, as you mentioned, across modalities, across campuses, and really, Embry-Riddle as a whole. We have to produce that. We're known for producing a high quality education, but we're also all known for introducing technology and the online learning component that we have. And so, how do we do that? That's a wonderful question. Now, we're doing a lot of work on that right now. There's a team at the university, you guys already know about this, called the Curricular Cohesion Team, and really they are making sure that fundamentally at the basics, blocking and tackling, that we've got the right learning outcomes, we got consistent learning outcomes, we got consistent measurement devices in there to make sure across whatever campus, across whatever modality, that we are achieving the learning that's necessary for our students to be successful as they enter this industry and they graduate from Riddle. So how do we do that across the board? Well, that efforts that are going on now is really important at getting the basics right. But then I think it really requires the cultures between the three campuses, really and truly, there's a different culture at Worldwide, as we know about. It's a dual learner. They're in the College of Aviation. The average student age was 32, and on the aviation side, on the engineering side, it was 28. We're here at the Prescott campus. That's much different. And these students are expecting a different learning experience, and they've signed up for a different learning experience. But the value of Riddle as a whole coming together is to be able to support these students to be successful across the campus in multiple modalities. So how do we take a residential student, if they enter into the online environment, how are they successful and consistently achieving high quality education there? And then our online student, worldwide student, come into one of the residentials. And that's been our challenge, because we think about it most of the time as a faculty in a different way. But the basics that we're doing, this idea of curricular cohesion, common MCOs, master course outlines, common learning outcomes, common ways and acceptable ways to measure if those learning outcomes were met, that takes us so far down that road that then we can get real comfortable with letting students explore this. And then it just turns into, are we giving our faculty the right training and education and insight to be able to effectively transfer knowledge in whatever modality they're teaching for our students to be successful? I'm not going to tell you we're perfect there, but I am going to tell you that we understand that and we're making real good progress towards it. And I hope as we move forward, we don't think about online, or we don't think about Prescott, we don't think about Daytona, we think about Embry-Riddle, and we think about how do we keep these students, or give these students a clear pathway to success through their academic programs.
Yeah, I will say that as a mother of a student at the Daytona residential campus, which hardly seems possible, but because I'm so young, but I will say that he enjoys the flexibility of taking a worldwide class every now and again. So really, I think this one university initiative benefits the students in a great way. So this is definitely something that that is a long time in the making. So this is a follow-up question to that, really for anyone. What does it take in terms of resources or administrative support, new ideas, that type of thing, for our university to be seen as a leader in innovative teaching? Ken talked a little bit about training. For anyone who'd like to take this one.
I'll have some quick ideas, Becky, and then I'll pass it over. Building off what Ken said, I think so much of this comes back to, not thinking about worldwide courses versus DB versus Prescott courses. I mean, the one university concept's so large, but if you think about it from a student success angle, we know there are things that Worldwide has available that our residential students could benefit from. I mean, if we start thinking about individual student achievement, student success, student learning outcome tracking, why are we not on the residential campuses looking at Worldwide pre-built existing modules that we can inject into Canvas and, in some way, shape, or form, remediate students in real time in their courses? Hey, you're not making progress on this outcome, and unbeknownst to the student, something opens up in Canvas that gives them a little extra attention or a little extra work. That's not additional work on the DB or Prescott faculty, but instead it's using already existing, really well done resources for multiple purposes. And from the student angle, they don't feel singled out because it opens in their particular iteration of Canvas. But for the student who doesn't need it, maybe it doesn't open up. So I think we need to start thinking outside of the bounds of how we've operated traditionally too, and better figure out how a lot of these really strong resources we already have can get used in other places.
Becky, did you want to add anything?
I'll just add a few quick thoughts here. So, in the IT world, we commonly think about tools or systems, but really we're in the people business first and foremost. And I think innovation starts with people and the culture. And if we have a culture around supporting innovation, being open to innovation, embracing new ways of teaching and learning in rapid ways too, I think that's where innovation can take place, just having a culture of accepting it. And I think, the more the university does in research and our strategies are built out at the top level and trickle on down through the organization, that's going to continue to grow and grow. So whatever we can do to support experimentation, and I think the great thing about higher ed is we're kind of a big experiment in a lot of ways. We can be fluid, even though there is this can be a structured academic cycle that we all try to live within. And I think at Embry-Riddle too, we have these distinct campuses, And they can create these organizational aligned, sometimes barriers, which again are not created by organizations, they're created by people. So I think if that culture is in place, we can really do some amazing things, continue to do amazing things as a university. So I really want to make sure we've got the infrastructure, the tools there when needed, and support, especially for faculty, and collaboration with faculty is critical.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of you say culture already. That is a big shift for some people, but it's very important. And innovation isn't always about technology, right? It's about thinking differently. And so I love how Will put that. We have to think outside the bounds that we have in place. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we have to continue to do it that way. So thank you all for your thoughts on that. We're moving on to institutional strategy and leadership now, and this is mostly for Ken and Becky. Becky, we'll start off with you this time. As student and industry needs and expectations evolve, what do you think one significant shift is that the university leadership should make to stay ahead?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about an example of where we've done this. So I'll kind of start with that, but I think your question's a little bit bigger and more important than my example even. So, one thing that we did, I think it was last year, maybe even the year before, in partnership with marketing, was deploying Canva to employees, but also all students at Embry-Riddle have licensing to it. So that's a lot of people know what that is. It's a graphic design tool. They're doing a lot with AI now, so you can leverage AI for presentation, design, graphical representation of whatever you're trying to achieve. So I think that's an example of getting a modern tool into the hands of students, and also when they get out into the workforce upon graduation or even before, something like a Canva is a pretty much, it's becoming a standard in a lot of organizations as a productivity tool, as a design tool, as a way to communicate and market for different people. So I think that's where there's alignment with industry when we expose students to tools and resources and information that's becoming a norm within industry. And that's various sectors of various industries as well. And, we see that on the engineering side of things too, in the use of CATIA and other programs. They're going to use them when they get jobs, and that's so important. So to me, it's about that translation for them as a small example.
Excellent. Thank you. Ken, I'm going to ask you the same question. With you in particular, this makes me think back to your time here at Worldwide and a very simple program name change from unmanned systems to uncrewed, because that was sort of what was happening in the industry. So can you talk a little bit about, again, student and employer needs and expectations evolving? What should we be looking at as university leadership to stay ahead?
Yeah, and thanks, and that's in recognizing that point as well. And I think that leads right to a massive strength that we have here in the university, is this connection to the industry that we're dedicated to, the aviation, aerospace, and space industry, this industry we all love so well. That's our niche. We're dedicated to that, and our connection to them has been a very powerful thing for our students when it comes to success. Just this morning, I was down at an event that we're having here on campus, and I was talking to some folks that were hiring from a large OEM, and I won't, I don't need to mention their name for advertising, but it was Boeing, and they were talking about how if they hire our students, Riddle students, that typically they can have them up to speed in producing within about a year, and other students that don't come with this foundational understanding of the industry that we support, it might take as much as 2 years to have that level of production out of them. So there's a value to this industry connection that we have, and using that to influence what we do in the classroom or with the academic programs. So I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a leadership change that we need to do, but it's something that we need to stay focused on as a strength of our university. Now, when you start talking about things that leadership might want to do a little bit different, we're hearing this right now from Dr. Butler. When we talk about our engineers need to have business acumen, they need to understand business. They need to understand the why. Okay, we have to build this perfect thing, but if it's perfect, it's going to cost us this. So therefore, maybe perfect is not the right answer. Maybe really, really, really good is the right answer. So those kinds of things that we need to be able to talk about. Nowadays, we're talking about AI across the curriculum. We're talking about data analytics across the curriculum. Those are the kinds of things that I think the leadership of the university has to stay engaged with, that bring value to our students and our graduates as they enter the industry, and then ultimately supports the industry in the right way.
Thank you. And Will, sort of related to that question, what role does data play in the decisions that we're making about teaching and learning and meeting industry expectations?
Yeah, 100%, Karen. I mean, data is going to drive the way on a lot of this. And I think so much of what we do with data today on the teaching and learning, the programmatic side, to Ken's point on leadership, is it helps us focus in on mission. And I think that's one of the things that makes us incredibly unique. Every time I talk at conferences about, ERAU, and I talk about accreditation and the work we do, I do say we come from a privileged position where we have a strong mission and we're true to that mission. We don't build programs just to build programs. We prevent ourselves from falling down some of those slippery slopes. But on the data side, it starts with being willing to look at it. I mean, on the teaching and learning side, especially recognizing that, even getting down to individual student or individual instructor level data can give us really meaningful opportunities to have impact. But we also have to recognize that's inherently uncomfortable for folks. I didn't love when I was teaching political science to know that my students struggled in the 400 level course with this topic more than other people teaching the same course. But I did take that as an opportunity to go figure out what everybody else was doing that I wasn't in that course, that was making some type of difference potentially. And given all the data we have, especially for worldwide, and with what you can pull from Canvas and what we could still add in to make it even more in real time impactful to see if students are learning what we want them to and what matters later. We just have to be willing to sit down and really put that time in. It's not about, more data. I don't think there's anybody campus wise, and this is speaking broadly, not just to Riddle, that's data poor anymore. The data is there. It's just a question of, do you have it in some form that's actually digestible to people, and are using it in a way that challenges and pushes without threatening? We can't be threatening when we have the teaching and learning data conversations. It has to be encouraging and about student success and how we can contribute to student success.
You caught me writing something you said down. What an interesting comment about the data is there. And I think for years we were hearing, we need to pull the data, we need to get the data out. And now we have all the data. And you talked about the conversations surrounding this data, and that's kind of the point I was writing down when you stopped there. But you were talking about I can't remember the verbiage you were using right now, but you said don't be offended, right? So the data is factual evidence. We can't take it personally. We have to use that to make strong decisions to move on, right?
Absolutely. And again, on an industry side, it's thankfully with, the advisory boards we have, our board of trustees being involved and being data focused, we have an audience to share that does lead to the strategy and leadership piece in ways that many institutions might not.
I'm going to go off script for just a minute. I know that makes people have a mini panic attack. But Ken, this one's for you. So the panic, I think you'll be all right with it though. Will just mentioned the industry advisory board. And I don't know how many people that are tuning in today really understand the role of the advisory board. Is that something that you might be able to speak to?
Yeah, no, this is close to my heart, so happy to speak to it. It's honestly what brings the value to our programs and to our graduates from Riddle across the board. Our connection with these industry advisory boards and how we leverage them is something special. I just don't think many universities have this kind of connection. And if you're not familiar with how we leverage an industry advisory board at a university, something I think I talk about a lot, just in simple things, blocking and tackling, right? The basics. If we get the catalog right, then it helps us build a schedule that's right. And then that helps us kind of advise to a schedule. So it makes advising better. We've talked about these very basic things, but we got to get the catalog right. And that's where the faculty are. The faculty have to get that piece of right to make it work. Okay, so all right. Well, how do faculty do a program? Well, if we're going to get the programs right, it starts with what? It starts with our program outcomes. From there, it clearly defines what our expectations for these students are when they complete a program. But if we don't get that right, then what did we just do? We just wasted a whole bunch of time and money for these young men and women that are really leaning on us to be successful in the industry. This is where the industry advisory boards are critical. So when we're talking about sitting around as faculty, talking about what does this look like? What does a uncrewed systems graduate from a bachelor's degree, what kind of things they need to do? What kind of things does a graduate from you pick it, at aerospace engineering at Embry-Riddle with a propulsion, you pick it. What do they need? What does the industry really need? Well, the industry can tell us that. We used this example from Worldwide years ago, and many of you remember Dr. Andy Anderson that was in our College of Aviation over there for many, many years. And when we were bringing on a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Maintenance, we were really kind of rebranding it. And we had a bunch of experienced maintainers, highly educated faculty sitting around a table, and they all had ideas of what these students should have. And then we quickly realized, well, maybe we're not right here. So we leaned on an industry advisory board, and it changed the direction of that program. By the way, it's the master's, not the bachelor's, but it changed the direction of that program. And we leveraged what they fed us is, well, who are they going to hire? We leveraged that information to build our program outcomes. And once the program outcomes were built and vetted, then all we have to do is build the curriculum that takes a student to achieving those program outcomes. The industry plays a critical role there, and that's why we lean on our advisory boards.
And I will say the
Excellent.
one thing really quick on that, Carey, because I think it's important. We have incredibly engaged advisory boards. So many campuses have them in name, but I mean, I love hearing back when we're talking about things as, what could be as mundane to an industry person as what are the learning outcomes for a program. And they're like, I have to run any change by my advisory board because they care about these things. And that makes all the difference. So it's not just having them in name, it's really having a group that says, let's talk about why you require that course because we don't need it. So do they really need it?
That is great. I use this phrase a lot, in it to win it. And it sounds like that's the kind of industry advisory board we have, made up of individuals who are in it to win it, who care about us being able to help their future employees graduate with the information, the knowledge that they need. So thank you for allowing me to throw that one in there. I appreciate it very much. So, Becky, we're back on script now for you. Although I know you could handle the off-script ones too. So AI is all the rage, right? Artificial intelligence. And every single day there is something different happening with AI. We have immersive technology progressing so rapidly. So how do we encourage and foster innovation while ensuring that there's responsible use, not just by the students, but by our developers and our faculty and staff as well?
That is a great question, Carey. Yeah, so I think it's about an environment where, kind of going back to one of the original questions, where experimentation is encouraged, but not unchecked. It's kind of that trust but verify approach. That gets interesting pretty quickly in the sense of, cybersecurity is about security controls, reeling this thing in, blocking these things. And research, for example, or education is about exploration. So how do you honor both of those things in a meaningful way? The only way to really keep us all secure definitively is to disconnect us all from the internet and each other. That's not going to happen. So knowing that, consider the risk and the risk adverse stance, and then the innovation stance. So it's very, very important as, not just technologists, but employees and leaders at the university, that we're supporting that exploration and experimentation in a really meaningful way. So some of those ways we do that is through clear, easy to digest, not complicated governance in the form of like APPM level policies and procedures. That are not super prescriptive, but also meant to be helpful. And then I think also just informational guidelines for people. There's a lot of people in education who are like, hey, show me a best practice. I want to follow it. And importantly, support structure. So that's not only like a 24/7 help desk, but also is there training and knowledge sources for people as we especially roll new things out. I'll give you, for example, on this one too. So we recently launched some bulk licensing for Microsoft 365 Copilot. And one of the requirements, yay, right? Love it. I mean, and that's, just kind of going into a different pocket a little bit. Leveraging something like AI helps us all focus on innovation because we can get the noise and the busy work out of the way by leveraging AI. So anyway, you can get a Copilot license and it can sit there and not do anything all day. But we decided to require a 1-hour training session because we wanted to pique people's curiosity. We wanted them to see the power of the tool. We wanted them to be able to explore it a little bit before they just had a license and were like, well, what's this thing that's over there in the corner of my Office apps? And then also enrolling them in a Microsoft team for further information sharing, exploring, collaboration. We create this community of practice, and then we create our own best practices based on what we're doing and seeing. So, just to kind of put a period on all of this, it's my role, the team's role is to lower the barrier to entry while also having the right guardrails in place. Sometimes we stub our toes on that and we misstep and we've got to take a step back and relook at it. And that's okay as long as we have the awareness and the wherewithal to do that. And more and more important going forward is we have that upfront collaboration and try to get some kind of buy-in to different programs, whether that's from the cybersecurity angle that's touching all these areas, just offering those playgrounds, being transparent about data and privacy and why. The university is a target every single day for bad actors and hackers, every day, every minute of the day. It's a very real threat, but that should never, ever stop innovation.
So you said a couple of things that I took note of. First, I think I'm going to circle back to something that I pointed out a few minutes ago. Now, every single one of you have mentioned culture in some aspect or another. And I think that's where it's important for us to understand your roles as the setter of expectations, right? Developing the culture. And you said a culture of experimentation. So I do have an off-script question for you, but you can handle it, I know already. When I started here, worked under your org structure. And so I think a little bit differently sometimes about technology. We have so many staff members and faculty members who are interested in being innovative and using technology. They go to conferences, they're inspired by some tool that they heard someone talk about, and they come back and they want to get started with it. And, I know better. I ask permission first most of the time, especially with technology. But what advice would you give to someone who is in that situation who says, oh, I saw this really cool tool and I want to use it now and I'm going to install it on my computer? What would you say to someone who wants to get started?
That is great. And that, conferences are a great source of new ideas. So I would say simply just start with an IT support request, and that kind of goes back to the idea of governance. We do have a technology purchasing APPM and also a procedure to support it. So yeah, it comes in, we've got a well-vetted process. We do an IT security review. There have been a few vendors in our past that they don't have enough, cybersecurity focus, or they're not doing even what we would consider industry-wide standard approaches to cybersecurity. And it's not just security too. If somebody wants to do something broadly for multiple departments or a campus, we're going to look at things like integration with single sign-on. We want to understand the support structure. Are there any other technology protocols we need to consider, and integration points? But yeah, if it's just an individual, it's pretty straightforward and simple. You submit the request. And outside of that, if it's new systems, new initiatives, we do have project governance. So monthly, we review new project requests and we put them through the process to understand, where the project manager and management, the teams, how do we put a project team together, all that good stuff. That's led under Kathy Quinto in our project management office. And then we do have a yearly technology strategic planning process too for bigger items. So we try to have multiple ways to handle it. So even if you're not sure, you just start with an IT support request and we can handle it from there. I would say a lot of those conferences, you guys know, are very sales driven. So there are some cautions in that. Salespeople will always tell you that their solution is the best solution in the world and it's going to change your life. And it may or may not be true. So
That's why IT is a partner, not a barrier. You're there to help keep us safe, right?
absolutely.
Prevent us from stubbing our toes on the guardrails, as you mentioned earlier. So, all right. I do have a follow-up question, and this is really for anybody. It might feel more like a Becky question, but someone else might have something to add here. So as we move to a one university approach, which we talked a little bit about earlier, how can we make sure that all of our students, no matter where they are, whether they're on a residential campus or they're at one of our worldwide locations or deployed in the middle of nowhere, how can we make sure that they have equal access to the technology and support that they need?
Well, I can give a quick answer and then turn it over to my colleagues here. So I think one thing from my perspective is that equal access doesn't necessarily mean identical experiences. We have, the worldwide campus is very different experience, and that's okay. We're not trying to make everything identical. And there's that saying of meet the students where they are. And I think in this situation, that's true as well. So what do they need for tools, support, and flexibility in order to, achieve academically and socially and whatever else is important to them here as students? So they should all feel, regardless if you're fully online or you're fully in the classroom on a residential campus, every student should have a sense of feeling equally connected to their instructors, to their academic resources, advising the community of Embry-Riddle in whatever way that looks for them. And that's going to look very different too, but they all know that's an opportunity and they have it. So from technology standpoint, that means, that we do standardize some things, that we do have equal access where it makes sense. So some things that we might deliver to a residential campus student perhaps wouldn't make sense for a worldwide student. But when it does, we need to have an equal playing field and not this department has a pocket of budget, this department has a pocket of budget. So we'll just serve those students. No, we're Embry-Riddle, and we've got to look at it from the student body perspective, not maybe a pocket of budget, so to speak.
And I'll just add, I think I completely agree. We need to have equity in what we're offering. I think we also have to acknowledge at this point that, 20 years ago, we give them a desktop computer and that's all they had access to, and we knew what was on it. Today, our students are bringing tools to us. I mean, part of this is figuring out where are they going for support and what technology on their own. Carey, you mentioned the AI initiative, and Becky, you've obviously, brought that for us, thankfully. But, students have AI tools when I talk to them where I'm like, I don't even know this one existed. Like, what are you doing with it? How are you using it? What's it costing you? I mean, Becky, you and I have had conversations on tools we're using individually, and it's like, do we have the paid version? Is it the free version? What's the benefit? So I think so much is actually talking to our students about, where are you going if you have a question? Are you jumping onto AI? Are you still using the internet? Are you going to an office? Where do you want to see this? And I think we, regardless of student type and campus, need to, figure out how we can best track that so we know how to provide that similar level of service and opportunity as best we can.
Ken, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just add up with what Will and what Becky was saying there. I think equal is not identical, just like what Becky said. I think the feeling of do we get the support we need from a tech perspective? If we say absolutely we do, that's equal to how Worldwide feels and equal how DB feels about that. But it's certainly not the same. For a lot of reasons, it's not the same. So I believe when we talk about equality across the university from a tech perspective, that level of support should be equal, and it is. It's just, but it certainly are not the same tools or the same frequency of the tools. Coming out of the Worldwide campus to Prescott, super talented faculty here, super talented staff, just like there was at Worldwide. But honestly, I thought I took about a 10-year step back in tech side, but it wasn't because that wasn't being supported. Absolutely it was. We were getting everything we needed. We just needed different stuff here, and it didn't look right. It didn't feel the same to me from that perspective. So I'm learning as we move forward there. And in the Worldwide Campus in particular, the motivation for tech is really, really strong because of the modalities that we're predominantly teaching in. Here, that motivation is not quite as strong. So I'm always looking for ways to integrate new tools out here with the support of the entire team to help the faculty be more effective in the teaching and learning environment. But it's certainly different. The good news is we get the same level of support, and that's what we think is the quality.
Yeah, I am thinking about this particular question, listening to you all talk from the worldwide perspective, which is really the one that I've had the majority of experience with. And I can say that in recent years, we in the Division of Academic Innovation have put together a team of instructional technologists who are vetting technology tools that our developers want to use, because we were running into situations where I heard Will say paid versus free. You know, we use this in industry, it does this. Yeah, but the free version doesn't, and it costs hundreds, you know. So we have a team that is now vetting tools to help our developers understand what's possible and what to expect. And along with that, we've also, I think, done a pretty good job at Worldwide throughout the years of setting expectations. I think a lot of times people sit down at their computers and think things should just work. Doesn't matter whether I'm on a Mac or a mobile device or Windows Vista, it should just work. And they get really frustrated when it doesn't. So setting those expectations ahead of time here, if you want the best experience possible, here's what we're suggesting at a bare minimum for you. So I think that's a challenge we're all facing, and Becky is, of course, leading and grappling with every day. So thank you all for your perspectives there. Aside from AI, anybody have a favorite tech tool that they're excited about right now?
Are there any left, Carey, that don't touch AI in some way?
I know, right?
I'm sitting here
I'm like,
racking my brain. I'm like, what have I used last that didn't have AI somewhere, somewhere attached? That's tough.
Okay, crickets. I have stumped everybody. There we go.
Yeah.
Well done, Carey Hansard.
I know, I thought I couldn't do it, but here we go. Chris is mentioning that there is a question in our Q&A here that could be related. So let me see. Concerning one university, what classroom facilities are available to record and/or play lectures to share among campuses? So what classroom facilities are available to record and/or play lectures to share among campuses?
Carey, can we ask on that? Do they mean in real time, like synchronous or asynchronous or both? So I think that's a big differentiator here.
That is a wonderful question. Well, we need some Jeopardy music to see
Yes,
if this
so-
person gives us some context.
If, well, we're waiting for the context. So, I mean, just from a functional perspective, you know, I would say technically a lot of the classrooms, you can do that type of thing whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. And then there are some like studio type spaces that may not necessarily be used for that kind of thing that would potentially be a fit as well.
Okay, well, I have no additional context for that question. So thanks. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just real fast there. It just might not be related to the question that's being asked there, but the capability is there. One of the really interesting things we were able to do over this last year between the two residentials, and I don't know, Becky, I'm sure somebody on your team made this happen, but they set up these portals between the student unions, and we would walk down to our student union, and there's young men and women holding up signs to the folks that they DB student union, and they're the Ernie's floating around, and it was really people texting people, hey, come down and wave, and that kind of stuff. So that technology between campuses, any of them, is certainly there. It might be to the culture and to the people that Becky's referred to. How can we use that in an innovative way other than just waving to the kids in Florida?
We just got to get daylight savings under control, because I can tell you from a scheduling angle, that's the issue. When the live courses go from one time to another time in between Prescott and DB, it gets difficult mid-semester.
Yeah, I'm done with that. I'd be happy to stay on the same time all year long. All right. Thank you for your contributions there. We're moving on to continuous improvement and quality assurance. And Will, this is certainly your area. I believe it might be in your team's title too, right? So how can we keep improving as an institution while finding that common ground between what faculty want and believe and the administration needs, or maybe industry accreditation requires?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we spend on my team on both the accreditation side and even the state authorization side for worldwide. We spend a lot of our energy here because, as we've talked about, we innovate faster than accrediting bodies and state authorizing agents can keep up with typically. So I always find this, number one, that it's our group's effort in our office to figure out how to make the innovations fit within the parameters of what accreditors are asking for. The more difficult part, obviously, is tying it back to the administrative priorities. We have lots of times on, let's use like the annual assessment plans where people have great ideas, but they don't necessarily tie up to where the institution as a whole is moving. And that's a lot of conversation and consultation on how can we reposition, how can we tweak, how can we help you get this into a lane that's going to get support. At the end of the program review process, which all of our faculty are in some way, shape, or form familiar with, we've moved to where they now kind of lay out strategic priorities they want to work on over the next 5, 6, 7 years. And we tend to be very transparent on this is something you can definitely do, and we can probably help you get resources for it, or we can, help you work through the IT process for strategic funding on technology or through SIT funding. And then there's times where it's, you can do this, but you're going to be doing it at the ground level. It's probably not something that fits a larger goal. So I think so much of it is, number one, knowing what that administrative priority is. And that starts with, knowing what's in our strategic plan, figuring out, how does this tie back to student success, retention efforts, graduation rate efforts, and then figuring out how to start making your case and your tie-in specifically to that. And I've shared with, a lot of different programs, our retention rates are great now. But as our retention rates have got up, the gap between retention rate and grad rate continues to kind of widen. So now it's going to be figuring out how to get that second number up. So it's not just getting them in the door and into year 2. It's now how do I get them out with the degree they're looking for, hopefully in year 4, but definitely at some point. And that's, again, hard questions, hard conversations, but finding time and making time to really meet and collaborate with your colleagues on your own campus, but also across the board. Ken mentioned some of the differences between Prescott and Worldwide. There's no doubt there's differences, but there's fewer differences than we might think. If it's working for Worldwide for students, even as a different student type, as Becky's mentioned, there's still probably something we can take from that and vice versa that's going to help us on our campus. And we just need to be open to those conversations.
We're stronger together. Ken, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think Will's spot on there. The communication is just critical. We got to talk about these things. The biggest derailment that we've had here, especially on the Prescott campus over the years, is we just weren't talking enough to make sure that we were aligning where you're talking about faculty expectations to administrative goals, and we just weren't effectively making sure everybody was on the same page with that. And once we are, and again, I think administration, faculty, any of these groups you talk to, any groups out there you talk to, when you start coming to that fundamental, this is about students and their success, everybody quickly starts realizing how they can contribute to that. And then we start working on how we align those goals and expectations. So communication is huge. Second part Will made there that I really love is this idea of, there's 3 different campuses, 3 different, kind of markets that we cover, if you want to call it that way, but we are all Embry-Riddle. Each campus brings us something, kind of a sweet spot. They have their sweet spot. They bring something unique to this larger Riddle conversation that's really special. If you haven't I can't pay for it. But if you haven't been out to Prescott, please come out here, see what is happening here. It's not that we're unique, but we do have a special thing that we add to this university Embry-Riddle conversation. DB, I encourage the folks out here to go to DB, see what a PhD level organization, see what the Microplex, see what their sweet spot is and how they're doing it. Go teach it worldwide. Get an understanding of what that adult learner needs to get from this. All of these things are Embry-Riddle. All of it is. Now we bring our own unique piece there. So the more that we're able to kind of go between the campuses, I think the more we understand how to leverage the values, or I shouldn't say values, how to level the tools that the other campuses have just developed by focusing on their sweet spot. So come on out. Don't charge my cost center, but please come out and visit.
I think that's hilarious that you did start that off with a disclaimer. I can't pay for it. I can tell you that I have had the pleasure of coming out to the Prescott campus. It helped me feel much more connected to the university as a whole. It's a completely different atmosphere, a beautiful location. And so now, having had some experience at not just the 2 residential campuses, but also some of our worldwide satellite locations, how eye-opening was that for me? I do think that it's a wonderful idea, and hopefully someone will pay for it, for them to come out and visit you, or to come to Daytona and visit us. That's a great idea too. So, Will, there are several people on the call who have never heard of your team. So for those watching who might not know specifically what it is that you all do, because I think you wear a couple of different hats. You mentioned it earlier, state authorizations, one of them. Can you explain how your teams help ensure continuous improvement across all 3 campuses of the university?
100%. And I'll say, I mean, you talk about culture. It's the reason we switched our office name to Continuous Improvement. I mean, we were formerly Accreditation and Assessment, which nobody wants to talk to accreditation or assessment. That's bureaucratic. That's reporting. That's a whole different mess. Part of it, though, is, what we really love to do is get in and work through problems with you. We'll help you identify them. We may point some out, and then we want to figure out what can we do incrementally to start moving in a direction you would like to see yourself go. And then, even more importantly, what can we do longer term strategically to help you get to some, larger vision that you have, while recognizing that may not happen overnight. So within the office, I mean, looking at academic and administrative assessment, we have access to seeing what everybody's trying to do, or attempting to do, or aiming to do. We also get to have conversations on, so that didn't work out, what were the barriers? What got in the way, and what could we have done to anticipate them or help move the barrier when it showed up? And we do a lot of that by, we start it with ourselves. Within our office, we constantly are changing. I mean, with accreditation alone, I mean, you can imagine how the last 2.5 months have been, in terms of wondering what it looks like and what comes next, and all the specialized accreditors. But, we try to keep the bureaucratic piece out of your way and handle the things you don't need to worry about, think about, or do. So you do have, hopefully, more time to actually engage in the work that actually matters from a student success and institutional improvement perspective. There's conversations you all have as either administrative experts or disciplinary experts that we couldn't duplicate, but we can try to make sure that, you sharing that with us is as easy as possible. So just constantly looking at our own processes and engaging in those conversations.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. We're down to our final 5 minutes here. So I'm trying to figure out a version of the questions here that works in the 5 minutes that we have left. I think we have sort of answered the big question here, but maybe one of you could speak a little bit to how your teams have encouraged faculty or staff to explore new opportunities or approaches in their work. And I'm going to combine that with another question that we were going to ask, especially if the initial efforts don't go the way you plan. I've heard a lot of people say, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. So how do you, I guess, encourage your teams to continue moving forward with that experimentation? And this really is for anybody who would like to, Ken, maybe this is a good one for you because you're in an entirely new role and you're learning how to navigate new waters, new cultures.
Yeah, I think the key word you just said there was learning, because I'm learning a ton every day out here, and it is again, university, super talented people across all the university, so that stuff's pretty solid. You'd expect this, you'd expect what I saw out here at the Prescott campus of being high end, high quality, but it is different. It's a different student, different tools that we use in the teaching environment. So how do we motivate? And honestly, I'll just kind of leave it with kind of what I came here with to the Prescott campus about 9 months ago, 10 months or so ago now. Came with this idea of we have to stay focused on student success. I think if we get everybody focused on that, whether you're in CTLE, whether you're in a classroom, whether you're in support, whether you're in IT, you're going to kind of work together to get better. And that we have to be good stewards of our resources. We can't go out and spend $10 million on a new toy that's really shiny, that really doesn't help us with student success. We got to be good teammates. That means talking to the folks at Worldwide, talking to the folks at Daytona that have the right ideas, that have found success in some of these areas. And then we got to get, most importantly, to your question here, we got to get a little bit better every day. So what I'm doing here right now is just trying to create that culture that we're going to try to dig and claw and everything we can every day to get better for our students. And that hopefully creates an environment where we start finding some of these tools, some of these ideas, some of this innovation, creative thought that will help us move forward from the campus here. I really believe at the Worldwide campus, leading those faculty over there, it was this idea of how do we get better and how do we kind of innovate in the classroom. I think it was actually maybe an easier kind of question to answer because the classroom was somewhat structured in that environment and everybody kind of was experiencing the same kind of thing. And we could talk about we need teachers, not facilitators, all these things that we were able to do there to get better. Still working on that here, but trying to create a culture of continuous improvement is where I'm starting.
There's culture again.
Hmm.
Culture is important, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. So in our final few minutes, Becky, Will, any closing thoughts?
I'll just kind of piggyback on that final question a little bit. As I was thinking through this, I think, obviously, I think we all have a takeaway around culture, which is kind of ironic because it's something I've been thinking of around the IT spectrum and maybe, a little bit of culture shift that we're thinking about. But I think ultimately, whether it's innovation, which simply is just something new to you, that, like we said, it doesn't mean technology. It can be a new process. It can be whatever, a new approach to teaching. That's innovation. And I think that, low risk environments with encouragement that is around thinking about innovation as an opportunity for growth, that it's an opportunity. It's not a gamble. Like if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be in trouble. That we don't want that kind of environment, right? If this doesn't work out, I'm going to learn from it and then I'm going to iterate and go on to the next thing that will work out. So if we can all keep that in the forefront, I think we're continue to be destined for great things.
Yes,
and I'll
not a failure,
piggyback
an
off that.
opportunity.
Yeah, I think, Becky, what you said is exactly right. And I'd also challenge us to remember that innovation for the sake of innovating is not the answer either. There are lots of new tools where I look at it and I'm like, oh, let me just play with this for a minute. And I'm like, nope, this is not going to do what I want it to do. I'm not even going further with it. Off it goes. So innovate when you have a purpose behind it. And every once in a while, it's okay to take a flyer and, see how things are going to work if you think it could turn into something and then learning what's working and not working. But as much as we're talking about innovation, part of an innovation culture is knowing when we don't need to. Change for the sake of change just frustrates people and it takes time and it, makes already very busy professional lives even more busy without the guarantee of a turnaround.
Amen. I love that. Well, everyone, on behalf of the Division of Academic Innovation here at the Worldwide Campus, I want to thank Becky, Will, Ken for being our guests today. I want to thank all of you for attending. I also want to remind you that in 5 minutes, we have a fireside chat with our Chancellor, Dr. John Watrette, and our Dean, Dean Dr. Dean Goon. We have a fireside chat with the two of them at 2 o'clock back here. So we thank you for attending this, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.